Okay, this is a review for the test over 13 and 15. We'll start with 13. And we know that President Lincoln spent money that the Congress did not authorize, and he moved troops, and that gave him the deployed troops, and that increased the power of the president. FDR is called the modern president. He did a lot of things the president's doing today. The founders, if it's in green, that means that it's not in your notes. The founders wanted to check the powers of the president that they thought the most dangerous through checks and balances. And the 22nd Amendment limited the amount of terms you can serve as president to two 4-year terms. Now, the House will impeach, and that's like a indictment today. They impeach you, which says, I think there may be enough evidence to have a trial, and then the Senate can remove the president from office by a 2/3 vote. Of course, we know Watergate was when Nixon was fixing to get impeached, but he resigned first. 25th Amendment decided 3 things. How do you get replace the vice president? How can a president give his powers away? And how can the president, if he cannot give it away, how can the vice president take office? Okay, and we go on down. The president can recommend legislation, but he cannot pass or introduce any bills. Most of the powers of the president are not in the Constitution. They're mainly by tradition. And the president is the president inside the United States and the president outside of the United States. So a lot of times they call it a dual or 2 presidents. The founders wanted to limit the powers of the president, so they only gave him about 3 powers. Commander-in-Chief, appointment powers, and of course the powers to address Congress. The president has a cabinet. The cabinet is not in the Constitution, but it is mentioned. Washington started, and then every president has added some things to it. And a lot of this we have studied in the other chapters. Let's go on down here. And okay, now, a lot of times the president will try to get a bill passed by going to the public, making speeches. The State of the Union is one thing he does. It is hard for the president, since he cannot vote on a bill. A lot of times it's difficult because his party is not in power. The Congress has their own agenda. A lot of interest groups may be against it. And, okay, we've covered that. Now, he does have the veto power. And, of course, Congress can override the veto, but that doesn't happen very often. Only 1 out of every 10 bills that are vetoed are ever overridden. And then we have I think the line item veto may be mentioned later, but the line item veto gives the president the right to veto just 1 line of a bill, but that was declared unconstitutional because it goes against checks and balances. Congress are supposed to want to do that. Pocket veto, if the Congress gives him a bill and he does nothing, and 10 days later, and before 10 days are up, Congress leaves, then that bill is vetoed, cannot be overridden, and that is called a pocket veto. Okay, a lot of this we cover in other we're going to cover some chapters. So okay, a lot of the powers of the president: he can negotiate treaties, he can recognize other countries, he can, of course, he can negotiate treaty, but the Senate has to approve it. He can have an executive agreement that that it has the power of a treaty but does not have to be approved by the Senate. Or he can make an executive order that has the power of a bill but does not have to go through the Senate. Executive privilege, that means that he does not have to tell Congress anything involving national security. And, of course, Congress passed the War Powers Resolution to stop the presidents from getting us into another Vietnam. This is called a legislative veto, and most of the presidents have ignored this because they thought it goes against the separation of powers and is unconstitutional, but no one has really brought that to court to check and see. Okay, we already talked about the getting support. FDR and Wilson made the presidency a world leadership. Before that, we were kind of in isolation. Teddy Roosevelt started what is called a bully pulpit, which means he talks to the people as a president and kind of gets them behind him on a bill. We talked about that earlier. And coming to the end of it, let's see. All right, that is a brief summary, and we're trying to get us all in 15 minutes. Now, let's go to 15. All right, 15. There's not a lot in this chapter either. Now, the main purpose of the bureaucracy is to carry out the wishes of Congress, implement the bills, and regulate policy. The civil service was a result of the SPAL system. Civil service is based on merit. The SPAL system was, you know, any of your friends can get you a job. The fundamental source of power in the bureaucracy is they have the ability to set guidelines. Congress tells them what they want to do, broad steps, and they can make guidelines on how is this going to be initiated. A lot of times, some obstacles to this would be that the law is unclear and some of the goals are poorly designed. Independent agencies are the ones who carry out the wishes of Congress, and if they want less pollution, and then the independent agencies are the ones that figure out how to do that. Okay. Once the policy is decided and has been passed and issued, the bureaucracy is the ones responsible for initiating it, to carrying it out. The government regulates the economy by a large part the private industry and private sector. And now the Republicans would like to see deregulation. That means lift some of the restrictions on businesses and so on. Okay. The president has a cabinet. All the bureaucracy goes up the chain of command and ends at a cabinet office. These cabinets are the head persons in charge of the executive departments, and a lot of times people think that they have too much power because they can make a law, tell the punishment, and they're the ones who judge it. Now, the presidential leadership in Congress is marginal. There's not a lot of leadership there because the Congress pretty much has its own agenda, so they do not always listen to the president. Now, the president does have the power. Congress can pass the money, but he can decide how the money will be spent and will it be spent. Now, these are three powers the president had over bureaucracies, and here are some of the powers Congress has. I won't read them to you, but you know they're right there. You probably need to go through them. The Iron Triangle is when a committee in Congress, a bureaucracy like the Army, and private industry like TI all get together and they want the same thing. It's very hard for them it's very hard to stop them. Okay, and that is all of it. Now that's pretty fast, but hopefully you'll sit down and go over these notes again, especially the things that I have mentioned, and then maybe if you have some time, read some of the chapters. Remember, I have given you some most missed, so you can look at those also. All right.